Hey y'all, we are live. Today we are talking about, let me get my chat turned back on. Um, Today we are talking about TVA lakes versus NorCal lakes, similarities, differences. It's kind of interesting, kind of cool actually. Bass is a bass, but it's a different life there, that's for sure. Brian Coling is on here in the chat. He is off golfing, for those of you who are wondering. What lake would you go to if you were at St. George, Utah? Coeur d'Alene? Was that Idaho? I don't know where Utah is. I wouldn't go to Utah. That's where I would go. The TVA lakes. So the lakes that I fished were Norris Lake, Watts Bar Lake, and Cherokee Lake. Lake Mead for Utah? Sure. I don't know where Lake Mead's Arizona, isn't it? Those three lakes are the ones that I fished. They are all TVA lakes, which is Tennessee Valley Authority or something like that. It's the same chain of lakes that runs through Chickamauga down to Gunnersville and so on. I think it's like Pickwick and stuff like that. I've fished there multiple times before and only had one good day from there, and it's always been a struggle bus to that. With that, I'll get into it. Went to Norris Lake and had a chance at a lot of fish. Had had them basically coming up on a glide bait. It's hard to explain. I'm very limited on tackle when I'm fishing. It's out of my dad's boat, which is when I started opening this channel. It was a Nitro Z9 2015, and I'm using all my dad's tackle, not mine. So I have some stuff that I have there, but not very much. And the only thing I had glide bait wise was a River to Sea 168 and I forgot what they call it, light trout. I call it banana. Throwing that, and I got hit multiple times, got rainbowed multiple times. Rainbowed is like as it's going along, it comes up underneath it or nips the tail. And I was kind of throwing it in this like 10-foot section, like it's like 10 feet deep, but it's like 10 foot off the bank also. And I kept having it rainbow, but couldn't get him to eat. I threw multiple other things in there, can't get him to eat. I'll get into what I was doing wrong here in a little bit, because it's definitely a thing. Went back into a cove. When I got back into this cove, I saw a ton of fish out in like 15 to 20 foot cruising around. I would throw stuff at it, couldn't get it to react. The water temperature is surprisingly close to NorCal lakes right now. They're where they're setting up is surprisingly close to NorCal lakes. Basically all of these TVA lakes, even though it's completely across the country as far as like spawn conditions and setup conditions, they're really close to each other. The weather changes are almost the same. It's ridiculous how many similarities there are between the lakes, and they're completely different sides of the country. So definitely kind of eye-opening. I've noticed that in the past, but they seem to get a little bit warmer water overall. In the summertime, that is, but that's down a wrong trail. So I go back in the back of this cove at Norris Lake. I'm in the back of this cove. There's fish all over. I can't get them to react. I can get them to rise on an A-rig. And they're going through there. Now, what I will say is there was a bunch of wind, and that wind was blowing into the banks. All of the fish that I had rainbow or hit what I was throwing was that wind was blowing into those banks. So I started focusing on those banks. Couldn't get anything to go in. ChampKind69 wants to know about the tide tables. There's no tide. There's no tide in the river, although we will get to that a little bit later on when I talked about it a little bit later. Because the delta and the tide and TVA lakes, there's definitely a link in between those. Anyways, that was basically the day of Norris. Caught a couple of fish. Never went crazy on them. Had them all located. So I thought, move from there. Day 2, Watts Bar, went on a guide trip with John Murray, who is currently fishing the Dale Hollow MLF Pro Tour right now. It was literally the day before he left. It was our guide trip on Wednesday. He left on Thursday. Out on Watts Bar, and he basically was able to answer a ton of my questions about TVA lakes. I definitely recommend him as a guide if you're new to that area. He definitely got us on fish. The thing that I missed that he helped me out with is that TVA lakes are kind of, even though they get deep, all of the deeper water is basically no man's land for bass, from what John Murray's saying, as far as like catching fish. Most fish are caught in 10, 12 foot or less. That triggered something in my brain to think about it, right? You got all these baits that came out that are known for TVA lakes. The deepest diving crankbait that's known there, minus the 10XD, is like 16 foot, okay? The average one is like, Ott Defoe has his chick magnet. That goes like 5, 6 foot. Then they got the Spro Little John, goes a couple of feet, right? Like after he said that, all these things started clicking in my head. And I basically realized, okay, maybe I've been fishing too deep. Okay, in doing that, he started pulling into pockets, and there was some grass, and then we pulled in some rock. And when that sun hit the water, all of those fish on Watts Bar that were down in that 10, 12 foot, he had a 10-inch Garmin, and you can see with forward scan, all those fish that were down in 10, 12 foot disappeared when that sun hit the water. I thought it was pretty interesting that they disappeared, and when they did, you could not throw your bait shallow enough. If you threw it up in that top, literally 1 inches, like when it landed, the water splashed onto the bank, they would pick it off of that and swim back down under the boat. So, what that reminds me of is I have a pattern on Berryessa that's very similar to that. You cast it up shallow, you dead stick it with drop shot, and it'll swim out to the bank or swim out underneath the boat. Clear Lake, same thing. You pitch it up shallow underneath a dock or whatever it is, and as you reel up to it, they'll be underneath the boat also. Okay, so obviously feed area for that is up shallow. Same thing as Delta. What's the old sign they talk about, like if you go up shallow, The bigger ones or whatever it is, they'll be swimming out at you. Like that's what you want, is they want them going out to deep water. The main fish, or the main thing that we caught, was chatterbaits, white chatterbaits with Zanko on it, and he actually dyed the tail chartreuse. And he basically said that the reason why he does that is because of the bait there has a chartreuse tail. I could actually pick them off in that deep section, in that 10 to 12 until that sun came up, and then they moved out, and that's what I was getting bit on, was that chatterbait, jackhammer. It's actually a color that I throw. I can't remember. It's a shad something. I don't remember the exact color, but it's one that I throw on the Delta. And then once they moved up shallow, my dad was throwing like a green pumpkin Cinco, wacky rig Cinco, and I was throwing a jig that he trimmed the skirt down on. He actually said he preferred that trimmed down skirt. Kind of interesting. Most people keep the full skirt. He likes it year-round trimmed down. And just flipping the bank, throwing dirt shallow, and just as you go 20 foot whatever on like 45-degree chunk rock banks, it would just be swimming out at you. Excuse me. Taking that knowledge from that, went to Cherokee Lake that I fished with my dad multiple times and struggled multiple times, and took that whole shallow mentality. Oh, almost forgot the biggest part. I apologize. Normally Brian's with me, so it gives me a second to think. He's in the comments for anybody who's wondering. The chubby redheaded guy that usually sits like right here, he's in the comments. There's so many other fish on those lakes that it causes them to stay shallow, or their food. There's 40-pound striper. There's there's big catfish. There's blue cats, is what they're saying. Ron Burgundy says, love your show, James. Misread, though. If you guys want to know who Ron Burgundy is, if you go in my Instagram and you search for literally, I think it's the highest viewed one that I have, where the guy almost falls in the water. That's Ron Burgundy, in case you didn't know. Do they do a lot of catfishing in Tennessee? Yes, for sure. There's a lot of catfishing. There's a lot of anything catching. If it swims, they'll cook it. Just kind of the way it is. Now that I'm getting sidetracked, because there's so many other things fighting for all of that, for bait, territory, all that stuff, the fish just stay up shallow. Taking that information, going to Cherokee, which also has name all the above, in those lakes, like there's muskie, there's pike, there's all sorts of stuff in these lakes, all sorts of toothy things, drum, all this other stuff. Taking that same shallow mentality, going to a completely different lake 50 miles away, fishing that same thing where I could get them out on a jerkbait, out deeper, sun hits the water, you have to be within that top 2 inches or top foot of the shore to get bit. And then the other thing is I picked like a rock face, and every time that you'd see like the face would come out and they would kind of bump out, they'd be on that bump out, and they'd just be like vertically stacked or kind of hovering around that bump out, throwing a jerkbait or throwing the Cinco. My dad was throwing the Cinco. He got some good fish throwing that Cinco, just slow dragging it, basically slow dropping it. And then we basically moved through there, moved into coves, and throwing jerkbait and Senko was our number one, number two things throughout the entire day. We probably had like probably 14 pounds for the day, which on Cherokee, that's check level. In tournaments, in multiple tournaments that I've seen out of there, that is check level. When the big sticks go there, that's low check level. But most of the time, that's right where you need to be, basically. So now, how all of that information relates to NorCal lakes, basically. New Hogan has striper in it. It made me re-register how to catch fish in Hogan, realizing I was thinking it's, oh, they just set up a certain way. Now that I know how they react or how they act at a different lake because of having so many other competitors, explains why New Hogan can be so different at times from any other lake that's out there. When bass are no longer that dominant creature, it changes their lifestyle, it changes their mentality, and it makes me understand why. The reason why I say this is a lot of the fish on Hogan that I see are located straight to structure, like they're tight to structure. I don't see them out cruising. You see schools of striper cruising out there. But like if you go to Berryessa, you can see them cruising out, like up off the bank. They'll suspend, they'll go out. They don't seem to do that on the TVA lakes, and they don't do that at Hogan. So it changes their mentality because they're striper big enough in Hogan to pick off those fish. Now, obviously, I'm sure once they get to the 5+ pounds or what, or 4+ pounds, they have a lot more freedom to move around, but they can't outmaneuver a striper to pick up bait because the striper are so much faster. So they may not cruise around as much, or they'll just mop up underneath them. The other thing is when they do draw water, or it's a river system, there's always water running, it's just how much is running. It changes where they set up as if you're fishing at the delta. So basically what I'm getting at is you can take all of the NorCal lakes and you kind of combine them, and you're able to start piecing together what you need to do in these other lakes. A lot of the times I get people who ask me for breakdowns of a video or breakdowns of a lake or whatever it is. You can take your information you learn from all these lakes, find something similar, and then stack and grow on top of that to pull the rest of what you need or what you could need to figure a lake out. It may take you a little bit of time, but you can figure it all out. I would say that Cherokee Lake is kind of a combination of Hogan and Delta and probably like a Malones. So like the whole place looks like Malones, but it fishes like the Delta because it's that top 12 foot. But then you still have that variable of having the striper and the other things in like Hogan does, and that structure relatedness of it that Hogan does. I say all of this to basically say, don't deny your instincts with any of this stuff. At Norris, before we went on the guide trip, I kept tending to go to that 12 foot or less where I was getting the glide bait fish, but then I would see these other fish out in like 20 foot and they wouldn't care about anything. Turns out they're not bass. They're probably catfish, they're probably whatever it is, but fishing on a lake that has nothing related to California, you don't know any of that information. Definitely recommend it. I actually would say that Norris Lake and Watts Bar are probably my two favorite lakes out of that whole area that I fished. I fished Chickamauga once for one day, didn't know what I was doing. I fished Douglas a couple of days. I fished Cherokee multiple days, and then Norris, Watts Bar. So I got 5 lakes out there, and I would pick Norris and Watts Bar out of all of them, and I'd kind of like another crack at Cherokee or Chickamauga. Anybody have any questions about any of that? Let me know. Ask away. I was originally supposed to do a video this week for Delta. I will have a Delta video, or should have a Delta video next week. I was supposed to be off on Monday. Boss asked me to come into work, so I came back a day early from vacation. Wasn't able to fish Delta. I've been hearing very, very mixed reports about Delta. Water clarity, Brian just asked what water clarity is. Yeah, water clarity. So, water clarity up there, it's kind of like Clear Lake, where you go into one pocket, 6 foot deep clarity. You go to another pocket, it's 2 inches deep. You go to another pocket, it's 4 feet. The wind changes, mixes it all up, where the clear water's over here and the dark water's over there, and vice versa. And then, so wind currents on top of water currents play a factor in that lake. I have not played with that very much. Unfortunately, don't have that much time. Ron Brady, we can't find Brick or Brian Fontana. Yeah, we don't know. Water clarity always looks murky in the south. There's a lot more moving water there. It rains 200 plus days, and rain is a light term. When they say it rains in a day, it literally rains for like 10 minutes in like an actual rain, and then it's done. But that constant water level, or that constant water inflow, keeps a lot of the nutrients and a lot of the stuff into that water, and that's why when it stops raining, that water clears up. For instance, Cherokee, I could see like 10-foot visibility in some areas, especially in the summertime. You can get almost like Berryessa clarity, and you could see it's like gin clear. And then like a big rainstorm will come through where it's like a deluge rain where you can't see through it if you're on the water, and then it'll be muddy-ish. Like you'll cut down your visibility in half, and then within a day it's back to 12 foot. House prices in Tennessee. This house that I'm sitting in right now, I could sell it, take the equity, and buy a 2-acre lot with a barn and a house, and literally probably not make a payment. Like $400,000 for a 2-acre lot with a external barn, basically not like a big barn, but like an external barn. $400,000 for like, I don't know. I'm kind of looking in that like 1,200 square foot area. I don't really need anything that big. I myself would be fine with a 1-room studio as long as my garage is big enough to fit in my truck and boat. I don't really care past that. What would you rank the Waffle House Denver omelet? I get the, what do they call that? Texas bacon Philly or something like that. That's what I get every time, and I love it. It is So not healthy for you, but it's so good. Um, it's one of those places that you know your arteries are stopping, but you still gonna eat it anyways. Um, actually, out of my 10 days that I was there, I had Waffle House 3 times. So it's one of my gluttons when I go there. Um, the oh, I forgot where I was going. You got me all excited with Waffle House. There's no way it would survive here in California, um, but they definitely need to put one close. Let me make sure I didn't miss any of these comments. Brian asked if I missed him. He's golfing. You don't even miss me. And you didn't miss me while you were fishing at Clear Lake. Oh, for those who don't know, Brian just broke his PB at Clear Lake while I was gone in Tennessee on an A rig. Imagine that. It was just under 9 pounds. So it was like 18 or 8. I think it was just under 9. So congratulations, Brian, for breaking his PB. He went fishing with a buddy of ours. And I definitely wish, as fun as I was having in Tennessee, I'm glad I went to Tennessee, but I also kind of wish that I had another crack at Clear Lake, because Clear Lake, when you know where they are, is really, really good right now. When you don't know where they are, it's the worst lake you've ever fished. Berryessa, from what I'm understanding, is cracking off right now and doing really, really well. Oh, that's where I was going. I walked Berryessa. I went to, it's called Smiddle Creek or something. It's up past Oak Shores. It's the next day use area, the one that you don't have to pay to be in. I parked in there, walked down to the water. The water feels warm enough. Did not see any beds the entire time I was there. I didn't see any old beds or even marks of beds. Not sure with this weather that's coming in this weekend. Man, they gotta be there. I didn't see any pushing up. I saw one fish cruising shallow out of the entire thing. Talked to a couple of different guys that were fishing, walking the shore. They were saying it's kind of one here, one there. They didn't see any on the beds either. No, I do know that there are definitely beds on Berryessa right now. In certain areas. I have not been there. I don't know where they're at. Not next week, but a week or 2 weeks from today, I will have a Berryessa video, and it'll more than likely be Brian and I talking, breaking down our Berryessa tournament. So I will give you a complete rundown when it comes to that. And how would you fish for largemouth bass shore fishing, Folsom Lake? Bed fishing, just walk the shore. That's a shallower lake for the most part. It's probably warmer. It's more inland, so it's probably warmer. I do know that there's beds on Oroville, so there's no way there aren't beds on Folsom, because Oroville's higher in the mountains. I just walk the shore and play with bedfish. If you aren't a bedfish fan, just remember that the females sit out in the darkness waiting to come in. So just cast a Carolina rig, a Texas rig, something out there into the abyss. Focus on secondary points. Focus on the middle of bays. Like, let's say the whole pocket is like a big dish. Cast out in the middle of the middle of the middle of that dish. And the bigger fish will either be there or they'll be out on the secondary points. It depends on how the cove sets up. And you're looking at basically anywhere from, I don't know, you can go anywhere from a robo worm to blanking on the name, it's creature bait. Zoom makes it, brush hog. Throwing a brush hog out there, dragging it on the Carolina rig. Or Big John's on here, you can ask him, he's really good at Carolina rigging. And his favorite is Margarita the Mutilator robo worm, just dragging that thing around. What else we got? I can sum it up for you. You carried your partner, but he was a hell of a deckhand. Yeah, I mean, I have days that I don't catch a fish and my partner does all of it, definitely. And it's team tournament. I'll take every single fish that we get into the boat. That's a very interesting name, though. Carlos. I'm not gonna say the rest. I don't want to be in trouble. Are there bass in Lake Powell? Yeah, there's a reason why they have Powell rods. There's definitely bass in Lake Powell. Jabowski, I heart fishing. Eric, I tried. Eric is definitely fishing with Eric Lau in the next Berryessa tournament, and he doesn't know it yet, but he's in charge of catching all of the fish. I'm just gonna take him to the areas. He can catch them all. This is not my best time of the year to win tournaments with. Jabowski, are you Angler of the Year in your bass club? No, I have not been. I have done it 3 times. The last 2 years has been Brian. The previous 2 years was me. Currently, right now, Brian is AOY. Current leader, I'm in 2nd place. There's another guy who's 3rd place. We're all within a couple of points with each other. I'm actually not running for it, so if it happens, cool. I think Brian's probably gonna get it, though. Even if I think Brian's probably gonna get it. The guy who's in number 3 right now, if he's fishing the way he's been fishing to close out the year, I don't think Brian or I have a shot. Dude is fishing hot, but he's also fishing like 30 days out of a month, it seems like. And I mean, realistically, if you can fish that many days where you're fishing more than you're not fishing, you're gonna be good. Like, you're just gonna be able to know that, and you're gonna be able to adapt to situations because you kind of got a feel from it. Can we hear from Angler of the Year? You can ask him why he's golfing instead of talking about fishing. Isn't 2nd place the first loser? Yes, but the queen has to do less work. The king has to do all the work. So I'm good with that. As long as I'm not last place, I'm good to go. I just want to be, like, if there's 10 people, I want to be number 9 or better. I just don't want to be number 10. That's the only one I don't want to be. All right. Any other questions? Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Now that this has gone completely off the rails by everybody sitting in one room in Utah or wherever you are golfing. All right, guys, I will talk at you later on. Again, a week from today will be, or should be, a Delta video. When you be live again? I love this content. Whenever I can't go fishing on the weekdays, that's when I'll be live, with or without Brian, because he seems to be busy a lot more than I am. The Delta will be next week. The week after that will be Berryessa. hopefully I have good news about Berryessa. Like I said, Eric's catching all the fish, so maybe we'll have to bring him on so he can say how he caught them all. I've searched around you, and you are by far the fishing content on the web. Well, I hope that's true. I don't know. I try to say what I can, but good 401. I appreciate that, champ kind. Eric says he would jump on here, so we might work that out. Get a little guest host action. Worked out good with Brooke and Lexi. So, all right, y'all. I'm gonna wrap this up. It's been 35 minutes. We're off into the weeds, just like a normal live video. See you guys next week, and until next time, I hope you get them.